There are two things that everyone in this room has in common. We all deal with conflict, and none of us get to choose our families. Yeah, conflict on some level, you know, we all fuss, we all fight, we all bicker, no matter what, no matter where we go, no matter what our work environment is, all of that. We just, wherever we live, there's always going to be a level of conflict. And our families, I mean, you're kind of stuck with them, right? You can pick your friends, you can pick your nose, but you can't pick your friend's nose. Wait, that's not how that goes. I think you can pick your friends, but you can't pick your family, right? You're born into that. Think about it. When you're meeting people, if there's conflict, you just don't form a friendship, and then there's no more conflict. It's fairly easy. Your family, though, you're stuck with them. You can't pick new parents, you can't pick different siblings. Really, the only saving grace is with your kids, because at every fire station they have a safe surrender in, so you can just give them up. No, totally kidding. Running away, giving your kids away, those are not good options at all. Your family is your family. And like it or not, at times, all families have a level of conflict. There are different levels of conflict and many different ways that conflict is dealt with. We're going to be talking about some of that today, but all families have and deal with conflict. Well, except Christy and I. We never have to fight about anything. It's awesome. Yeah, it's so great. Yeah, I mean, no, I'm kidding. Obviously, we do argue with 5 kids, 6 and under, and another on the way. Tensions have a tendency to run high. Yeah, absolutely. Because with all those little hands to help us with everything, we've got so much free time, we're arguing about what to do with it all the time. No, I'm just kidding. Later, when they can all work, I assume that we'll argue about what we can do with all of that disposable income, you know? So I get it. Life is very difficult. No. Yeah, right. We really do have conflict. In fact, if you were here last week, I showed a video where we were on a road trip and the whole thing went off the rails because Christy reminded me to get gas and I ignored her advice, later leaving us stranded on the side of an Arizona highway 10 miles from our destination right as a thunderstorm rolled in. Yeah, I'm not going to show that video. If you missed it, you can watch the link on our Facebook channel. But here's a screenshot and you can see that she's having a really good time, right? Yeah. Yeah. Now here's the thing. She was right and she was proved right, but does she look happy? No, absolutely not. Yeah. Being right doesn't really feel that good. Even when you win at a conflict, when it's with your family, when it's with someone you love, nobody really wins, do they? Here's a great truth. When you win an argument in your family, you don't really win anything. You win an argument at work, high five, a policy gets changed, right? You win an argument in the courtroom, way to go, you get things on your side. You win an argument on the basketball court or the football field, awesome, the call gets changed. And you generally move on, and everybody kind of just moves on. But if you win an argument at the dinner table or in the car or in the bedroom, how's that going for you? Not great, right? Absolutely not. Yeah, sure, nobody really wins, because when there's a winner and there's a loser and both people are in the family loses. It's different at home than it is at work. The words sting a little bit more, the hurts last a little bit longer, and it's just a little bit more complicated. It's one of the reasons that things are more complicated is that we don't all deal with it in the same way. We process things differently, don't we? And that has a big role, especially in a marriage or a dating relationship. It can really play a big role. Now, I'm going to talk about some of the most common types and kind of ways that we deal with conflict. And you'll be able to identify the ones that you deal with. But look at me. Everybody look up here. No elbows. Okay? Okay, so I want you to think about yourself and your own conflict style. This isn't like, oh, that's you. Okay? Don't do that. Okay? So the first is the passive. I don't have to warn them about the elbows, okay? The passive person hates conflict so much that they won't even argue. Okay, whatever, let's just move on. Let's all be happy. Come on, let's go skip in the park together, right? Arguing with the passive is almost impossible because they won't argue back. And now, why do they do that? Well, they hate conflict. They want to always avoid conflict because they want peace. And they think, even if I have to not confront or deal with issues, if we can just move on, everything will be all right. And so we've got these passives, okay? Then there is the sulker. Now the sulker, these are the ones who, even after the conflict is resolved, they still walk around with a pouty look on their face. Even if they won, they walk around like a sad puppy dog. Why do they do that? Because they feel bad about conflict, and they want you to feel bad about conflict too. Or if they think if you feel their pain, this may be subconscious, but if you can feel how awful it is to have conflict, maybe you'll do things differently next time and will avoid conflict in the future. Maybe you'll care about what I want. Then there's the stuffer. The stuffer. They try to avoid conversation and conflict. Stuffers bury it down and they try to move on. And it works for a little while. First, there's not much talking, then they start saying nothing at all, and then boom! Stuffers are like volcanoes, and we all have had interactions with them. They go from calm and silent to World War III in like 2 seconds. When they finally crack, it all comes out. And I mean like it all comes out, like stuff from before you had kids, before you were married, stuff from your first date can come out when the thing explodes. Yeah, it's all in there somewhere. Their goal, and why does this exist? It's because they're, and again, this may be subconscious, but they're trying to avoid an argument. They're trying to avoid trouble, and they just hate the feeling of people being unhappy with them, so they'd rather just they'd rather just bury it. But we've said this before, when you bury your problems, they get buried alive, don't they? And eventually, things become a problem. Yeah. Then there's the lawyer. The lawyer. These are the best arguers. Their motto should be, often wrong, but never in doubt. Because they just want to, they can argue with the stick, to be honest. Like a pole in the ground, they could argue with it. Yeah, your family doesn't even try to argue with you anymore because they know you'll never stop. Like it's not even a point. And what is the purpose of that? Well, because if no one will argue with you, then you win. And you can feel important, okay? And again, this may be subconscious, but you feel like, well, people care about me. I have information to offer, and I have things that help us move on. But a lot of times it's just people are giving up because they can't deal with you anymore, okay? And lastly, the screamer. The screamer, yeah. Just like the name suggests, these people are loud. A screamer is like a stuffer after the volcano explodes, like after the breaking point. Conflicts with them, it could be a 1 or a 2 level issue, gets brought to a 10 real fast. Their goal, and why does this exist? Because it works, because conflict becomes so uncomfortable for everyone else that they just back down. And so it feels like you win, because others got uncomfortable, and they back down, and so it feels like you won. So which are you? Not which are your spouse, okay? Not who are you dating. Think about yourself for a second. Which one do you identify with, okay? The passive, the sulker, the stuffer, the lawyer, the screamer. Now, an interesting and challenging thing is that the kind of law of attraction that opposites attract kind of plays into this a little bit. It really does. So usually, if you're in the last two, some of the more volatile ones, the lawyer or the screamer, you tend to not marry another lawyer or a screamer. You tend to marry one of the more milder ones. Like when lawyers and screamers, when they get together, like it has a tendency to end up in counseling really fast or go supernova before a marriage could ever happen. And so that's usually not it. Plus, it's always interesting. People, like, that's the way you're attracted to people, is they're different than you, and there's things that are cool and neat and different about them. And so usually you marry one of the meeker. And now, normally, conflict takes a little while to come out because there's that infatuation phase where you just overlook everything because you're just so infatuated and, hubba hubba and all that stuff. But eventually, you're married, and dude, it can be quite a shocker. If you are a stuffer and you married a screamer, the first time you have a real conflict, it can be a real eye-opener. I mean, it's like, whoa, what just happened? Where's the holy water demon? Get out! Like, what just, I don't know, we gotta get this out of here. Yeah. Now here's the thing, the conflict style that you have, it's usually learned from what you grew up with. It's what you saw modeled, and usually it's the only thing you've ever seen. It's the way that your dad was, or the way that your mom was, or the way that it was handled with your siblings. And so, to you, that's the only way to deal with it. But it can be quite a shock when you get into a relationship and they have a different style than you. Though there are many different ways to handle a conflict, there's primarily one source of conflict. And we're going to write this down. This is the very first thing that you're going to write down today. So if you're on the app, get those thumbs ready. If you are going to use that outline, which I encourage you to do, just be ready to take notes, okay? The big idea of today's talk is that outside conflict happens because of inside conflict. Outside conflict happens because of inside conflict. This big idea and this relational insight comes from the scriptures. We're going to be looking at the book of James today. James was the brother of Jesus, so you'd think he had no conflict in his home, but I am assuming that he knew a few things about conflict because he had other brothers and sisters and all that. But basically he wrote a book of the Bible, creatively titled James, and we're going to be looking at that today. He says this, "What is causing the quarrels and fights among you? Don't they come from the evil desires at war within you? You want what you don't have, so you scheme and you kill to get it. You're jealous of what others have, but you can't get it, so you fight and wage war to take it away from them. Yet you don't have what you want because you don't ask God for it. And even when you ask, you don't get it because your motives are all wrong. You want only what will give you pleasure. So let's go back and we're going to look at that first question that James posed, okay? What is causing the quarrels and fights among you? I want you to do something for me. Everybody in this room, and on the patio if you're watching through the camera, would you just close your eyes? I promise we're not going to surprise you with an air horn. No one's going to steal anything from your purse, okay? Just close your eyes for a second. I want you to picture your spouse or your significant other if you're in a dating relationship. If you're single, picture a sibling or a parent, somebody that you potentially have some conflict with. Now, don't say anything out loud. No elbows, okay? Eyes are closed, so no stink eyes, okay? I want you to think about them and the conflicts that you have. And I'm going to ask James' question again and just give you a second to think about it. When you're thinking about them, what is causing the quarrels and fights among you? Okay, you can open your eyes. Now, I'm not a mind reader, but I would bet that a lot of us started to play a little game called the blame game. Yeah, where we thought, well, here's what the problem is. The problem is them. And here's the problem with them. It's the way they're behaving. It's her, it's him, it's them. They don't make enough, or they spend too much money, or she doesn't appreciate me enough, or, you know, do this or that right. My parents, they just don't understand me. My kids, they're just so disrespectful. That's the real problem, the root of all of our issues. But here's the problem with the blame game in relationships. If we play it long enough, we start to think that the very people we should love the most are the source and are responsible for our unhappiness. Is that going to help things become functional or dysfunctional? Pretty dysfunctional, right? If we're believing that the people we love the most are the source of our unhappiness and discomfort. We start believing lies like, if they weren't around, or if I wasn't around them, or if they would just stop this, or if they would start that, I could be happy. And on, we're pointing the finger at everybody else, because it's not my fault. It's never my fault. It's always their fault. Their problems are causing me to be unhappy. But remember, outside conflict happens because of inside conflict. You know that old adage, if you point at someone else, there's three what? 3 fingers pointing back at you. These guys right here, right? Yeah, that there's a lot more going on inside you when you're like pointing the finger at someone else. You know what we do when we assign blame and unhappiness to other people? The minute we do that, we take our happiness and we put the control of it in the hands of the person that we're in conflict with. We give them control over our happiness. Here's a simple thought. As long as we blame others for our unhappiness, we're not going to find lasting peace. We've got to take ownership of our own lives. Again, if outside conflict happens because of inside conflict, then leaving isn't a solution. It may feel good for a bit. You might get a fresh start. Wherever you go, though, there you are. And so a lot of times those inner problems will begin to surface again. This is one of the reasons that divorce rates go dramatically up with second marriages, dramatically up again with third marriages, with fourth marriages. Okay, now, that's one of the big reasons, is because a lot of times you think it's them, and sometimes it is, but a lot of times there's also stuff going on in here, and you get into a new relationship, and it feels so great, and everything's going so good because you're in that infatuation phase, but then that wears off, and all of a sudden, those problems still exist, and they haven't been dealt with. You thought you assigned them to someone else and moved them out of the picture, and now here you are again. And the cycle can repeat. Now, as long as we blame others for our own unhappiness, we won't fix the inside conflict, and the outside conflict comes from the inside conflict. It's a little bit true at work, it's a little bit true with friends, it's a lot true with our families. Now, there's no denying that other people, including those we love dearly, are just as messed up as we are. I mean, they really are. But the best way to avoid our nuclear families turning into thermonuclear meltdowns is taking a look at that core, right? Look at that reactor that's within your own heart. So, as we look at this next statement, it's a conflict resolution statement. We're going to write it down. I don't want you to picture your spouse or your siblings on this one. I want you to picture yourself, your own heart. Let's look inside our own heart and consider this. The statement that every family member, really that I need to make, is, you know what part of the problem is here? I'm not getting what I want. Write that down. I mean, so much of conflict really boils down to, I'm not getting what I want. It's funny how, like, sometimes I see the things going on with our toddlers mirrored, you know, in Christy's behavior toward me. Just kidding. No, it's true, though. That is true both ways. Yeah, a lot of times it really comes down to simple stuff. I'm not getting what I want, and I'm grumpy, and I'm tired, and I'm hungry, and, you know, that kind of thing. Let's look back at James' words. What is causing the quarrels and fights among you? And then he says, they come from the evil desires at war within you. James is saying, stop with the blaming. You're never truly going to develop in character as long as you make others responsible for the way that you feel. As long as you're blaming others, you're not going to work on yourself. But outside conflict happens because of inside conflict. And every time there's conflict, on some level, it's because we're not getting what we want or what we think we deserve. We're putting ourselves ahead of somebody else, and it's pride, that's selfishness. I mean, it's sin. And that's, there are things that we want so bad that we're willing to hurt other people, even people that we love, the most and that we're supposed to care about in pursuit of what we want. If we're lacking a sense of value or worth or happiness in our life, and we haven't taken ownership or responsibility for our part in that, we're going to put it on others. We're going to demand it from others, including and especially our family members. We're going to want them to give us what we feel like we need to be happy. But we've got to not do that. We've got to heal from the inside out by acknowledging what's broken inside us. In any conflict, the moment that you own part of the problem, doesn't it relieve a little bit of the pressure? Like, even if it's just a little bit that you take on ownership, it does relieve a little bit of the tension. What would happen if in the middle of the next conflict, you looked at some of those fingers pointing at yourself and you just brought that to light? You know what? There is a lot going on right here, but I'm also acting unreasonably. Can we start again? It would relieve a little bit of the tension. The next thing in your notes, I want you to write this down. An important family truth. Your family is not responsible for your happiness. This is a really big key. Your family is not responsible for your happiness. Your spouse isn't responsible to earn enough money or look good enough for you to feel good about yourself. Your kids are not responsible to perform good enough in sports or in school for you to feel good about yourself. Your parents are not responsible to give you enough praise or enough support or enough approval for you to feel good about yourself. For those of us who are Jesus followers, and I know there's a number of us here and there's some people that are just checking this out, but for those of us that are Jesus followers, our satisfaction needs to come from who Jesus says we are, not how somebody else makes us feel. This may be something that we need to grow in, but the more we get to know and understand Jesus, our inside begins to change, and it begins to affect our outside, and it begins to affect the conflict that's around us. So while our family is not responsible for our happiness, what's inside comes out, and as we become happy, we should look out for the happiness of others. Isn't that interesting? Look at Philippians 2, 1 through 5. This one's not on your outline, so you won't find it there, but I'd encourage you to write Philippians 2, 1 through 5, and just go look it up this week. Google it or something, because it's a really great verse. So I'm going to put it up on the screen so we can read it together. This talks about this inside-out process of fixing yourself through Jesus and then how that affects your relationships outside. He says, "Is there any encouragement from belonging to Christ? Any comfort from his love? Any fellowship together in the Spirit?" I would say most of us would say, yeah, that's why we're here. We do believe that. "Are your hearts tender and compassionate? Then make me truly happy by agreeing wholeheartedly with each other, loving one another and working together with one mind and purpose. Don't be selfish. Don't try to impress others. Be humble, thinking of others as better than yourselves. Don't look out only for your own interests, but take an interest in others too. You must have the same attitude that Christ Jesus had." Looking out for the interests of those that we're in conflict with, it sounds counterintuitive, but it's that Jesus idea that we introduced last week. Last week we talked about the one big idea that Jesus taught that really all of the Bible's teachings on the family come out of, and it was this idea of mutual submission. Not submitting like in the UFC where you give up, but mutual submission, where you put the other first and you help meet their needs, but it's mutual, so they're doing it back to you as well. And that this is the way the world was supposed to work before sin made us care more about ourselves than others. This idea of mutual submission. If you missed that last week, again, you can jump on our Facebook page. The YouTube link is on there and you can watch it. But we said that there's one question that will help grow mutual submission in your life. And we issued the daily question challenge, where we're going to ask this question of ourselves and our family members at least every day. And I did it in my family, and it really, really rocked the world a little bit for us. So I'm going to see if you guys remember it. Let's see if you can finish the question, okay? The question was, what can I do to help? Good, we got it. Awesome. Dude, like half of you were here. This is great. Okay. If we apply this big idea that finding healing and happiness in Jesus, like that's where we find it, we'll stop looking to our families to fulfill us. We'll own our part in conflict, and we'll always look for ways to help them resolve their inner conflict. It sounds simple, but it's not, because it goes against our natural tendency to be selfish. It really goes against that. So it's not easy. It actually can sound really, really hard. So this week, let's take this kind of hard assignment to our generous God. James continues, "Yet you don't have what you want because you don't ask God for it." Do you pray about things like this? Not just for the problem to go away or for your spouse to stop doing the things that are making you unhappy, but do you pray about your core issue of unhappiness, the inside that needs to change, some of the inside of them that needs to change for them to be happy? Like, what would happen if before you went storming down to the room or slammed the door or fired off that text with the angry emoticon, what if first you went to God in prayer for a second? God, would you help my husband follow you? Would you lead our family towards you? God, would you help my son make better friends? Would you help him to do better in school? God, would you please, please help my daughter just dump that loser of a boyfriend? I know you love him, God, but could you love him through someone else's daughter, please? James is saying, has it occurred to you that before you go extracting something from someone else to try to make you happy for your benefit, what if you went to God first? So this week, we've got a new challenge. We're still going to keep asking that question. What can I do to help every day this week of ourselves in situations and of people in our family? And man, it helps. I got asked the question a few times this week, and it was like, yes, my wife listens to my sermons. No, I was like, no, it was really helpful because it was just, dude, you feel so valued and appreciated. And if you say yes and give them some things and they do it, man, it's just such an honoring thing. And then it makes you want to immediately serve them back. It builds that mutual submission. But this week, our challenge is we're going to add to that a prayer a day challenge. Every day this week, I want you to look for a way to ask God to help meet the needs of someone in your family or yourself. Take those things that you want from and for your spouse, your kids, your parents, your siblings, and ask God to meet those needs. I believe that as we do that, it's going to change our heart a little bit. We're going to have more compassion toward them, and it's going to also reveal some of what we're looking for isn't that important, and it's going to start healing some of our inside. But I believe it's also going to help us better understand what it is we think we're not getting, and we're going to build trust and confidence in God to meet our needs. And when this happens, we're going to disengage from conflict. We're not going to keep trying to get it out of the other person. It's going to bring the tension down in our family. It's going to help cool the thermonuclear, aftermath or whatever it's called. What's it called? Half-life? Yeah, it's going to get better. Check out this verse. Seek your happiness in the Lord, and he will give you your heart's desire. What a great verse. Now, that's not a genie in the bottle verse. That's not like God's going to give you the greatest desire of your sinful heart. This is a healing verse. This is God saying, I made your heart. The things that you care about, I put that inside you. And I'm going to help heal and restore you to want the good things for your family. And I'm going to help you achieve those things when you work with me together. So this is not that genie in the bottle verse where like, great, because I'm going to drive home in a Maserati now. That's not how this is going to work. But it absolutely is true. If you seek your happiness in the Lord, he's going to help you find that happiness. He's going to help you find peace. He's going to help you resolve conflict in your life. He knows what you care about, what you're passionate for. He helped put that inside you. He knows the stuff in life that has gotten you off track, stuff that was your fault, stuff that wasn't your fault. He knows what makes you feel incomplete, and he wants to help restore you from the inside out. And when you feel this, you're going to feel something called peace. And this is the last feeling, okay? The bottom line, write this down. Peace on the inside creates peace on the outside. Last week, we said that what is inside will eventually come out of us. This week, we said that outside conflict happens because of inside conflict. Well, guess what? Outside conflict won't happen if we have peace on the inside. We're like a duck. Water just rolls off our back. We're not sweating it. When people bring dysfunction our way, but we're peaceful inside, we don't feel like we need to jump in that dysfunctional whirlpool. We're able to bring peace to them and resolve conflict. If we stop placing our happiness in the hands of others and bring our needs to God in prayer, he will refresh our perspective. He's going to help us find peace. And guess what? Peace is contagious. He's going to help us keep our nuclear families nuclear and from going into thermonuclear meltdown. I'm going to pray for us, and then Christy is going to close us out. God, would you help us live from the inside out and not the outside in? Help us take ownership of our own inner conflict, our insecurities, our fears, our shortcomings, and come to you in prayer this week to heal us from the inside. Would you fill us with peace so that we can create peace in our families and our relationships? In your name we pray. Amen.